The Death Valley National Park has become home to what at first appeared to be cult activities. These phenomena are centered around the Devil's Hole cave system. The cave is unmapped and was only thought at first to be around 500 feet deep. Recent discoveries suggest that the cave may be thousands of feet deep and displays numerous anomalous qualities. After a series of disappearances in and around the cavern, the Death Valley Police Department sent an investigator to map the cave. Before his passing, the investigator discovered, among other phenomena, that the laws of physics can function differently within the cavern. Not only this, but the layout of the cave is rumored to morph and change, trapping any occupants in an ever-shifting limestone maze, evidently inhabited by dangerous and otherworldly fauna. The disappearances didn't cease following the discovery of the nature of the Devil's Hole. In fact, they seemed to increase. Not only this, but the seemingly paranormal nature of the disappearances attracted a crowd of what called themselves supernatural tourists. Curious as to the anomalous nature of the cave, these tourists flocked from all over to get a chance to see it for themselves. Despite knowing full well of the dangers of the cave, the locals seek to profit off this. However, with the cave closed to any individual not involved in the investigation or law enforcement, this would prove difficult. In attempts to monetize the confounding nature of the Devil's Hole, an independent contracting company, Lucicorp, approached the Death Valley Police Department and proposed a deal. If Lucicorp were to completely fund and undertake all facets of the cavern investigation, they would be able to access the grounds on whatever basis they would like. This would allow the Death Valley PD to focus their limited resources on their police work rather than ghost busting, as Lucicorp put it. The Death Valley Police Department, already stretched thin and unprepared when it comes to handling non-anomalous phenomena, reluctantly agreed to hand over the entire operation to Lucicorp. Lucicorp organized their first expedition into the cave the same day that they began planning infrastructure for tourism endeavors. Richard Gray was the first investigator hired by Lucicorp to explore the cave. He was given a corded expedition phone, a digital camera, and a hazmat suit. Mr. Gray was in the cave for several days. Upon exiting the Devil's Hole, Mr. Gray had been stripped of his hazmat suit and the rest of his clothes. He looked incredibly pale and was in severe distress. He had no knowledge of why he was naked. He was also seemingly surprised that he was naked in the first place. Mr. Gray's report of his time in the Devil's Hole is as follows. When I first entered the cavern, it looked like any other flooded cave. As I turned back to face the surface, the light that had previously illuminated my back dissipated, and I was facing a solid rock wall. I turned back around to reveal a circular room, lit by a fire in the middle. The cord to the phone was now outstretched in front of me, leading me further into the cave. The walls were lined with what looked like a deep red mix of cave paintings and cultish iconography. It looked somehow both meticulously painted in some parts and splattered with reckless abandon in others. I followed the phone cord and cultish symbols into another room, then another, then another. I lost track after the 12th or 13th. They all looked the same. Upon getting deeper into the cave, I heard screaming, desperate screams for help. This wasn't all I heard. There were also a series of violent, cacophonous clicking noises. I turned back to go in the other direction, but the cave cut me off again. I had no choice. The horrible chorus got louder as I followed it. The symbols and the cord to another room yet again illuminated with fire. It's almost as if the cave were leading me to witness this. I saw a group of what I could only describe as bat people, things, whatever, drag a tourist that had been reported missing several days ago onto a carved slab of stone. He must have been 300 pounds, but one of them picked him up and threw him on the slab like he was nothing. They pulled out a blade and cut him from his neck to his crotch. Then they began to eat the vital organs, heart, kidneys, liver, and intestines. They finished their meal by scalping him, cracking his skull like a coconut, and eating the brain. Then they split his legs and arms down the middle, cracking the bones and pulling them to make it look like he had 8 limbs rather than 4. I almost puked at the sight of it, and I couldn't take it anymore. I followed the phone cord past it as silently as I could, but I accidentally kicked a small pebble. All of them swerved around and stared directly at me. They instantly burst into a sprint and repeated their grating, clicking noises as fast as a machine gun. I snapped a picture, and they seemed to hate the flash. They stopped momentarily, screeching in pain. I used the opportunity to slip through a crack in the wall, and the second I was out of that room, there was only a solid rock wall behind me. No monsters. I followed the cord back to the surface, and nothing weird happened on the way out. It's almost like the cave wanted me to get out. Please don't make me go back down there. Mr. Gray was sent back to the cave a few days after his initial report. He went missing on his second expedition. The next day, Lucicorp hired another investigator. As the bodies piled up, it would soon become clear that the way Lucicorp saw it, as long as they could keep finding investigators to sacrifice to the cave, they could keep their potential tourist business feasible. Ayo! It appears that the anomalous Devil's Hole cave system has a whole cult of wild and wacky monstrosities living inside of it. I wonder if someone's gonna go on to explain what exactly these weird cave people are. Probably not, though. The cavern people have incredibly pale, almost bony skin. The texture of their skin is described as an entire body callus. They also have large, blacked-out photoreflective eyes. These creatures are violently photophobic, similar to the cave spider from the previous entry. They have rat-like face whiskers for sensing the environment, and disproportionately large triangular ears to hear things real good. The cave people also have fishhook-shaped claws on the ends of their fingers and toes for multiple reasons. None of them are sexual, I promise. One reason is for use in hunting and killing. Another is for use in fishing the incredibly endangered fish that live in the waters of only the Devil's Hole. And yet another is for use in scaling the walls and ceilings of the cave. The teeth of the cave people resemble those of a crocodilian, likely having something to do with their fish-heavy diet and the need to quickly skewer those slippery bastards. The cavern people seem to hunt using a mix of scent and echolocation. They echolocate using a series of similar, yet quite distinct clicks. Whereas the language clicks have more of a variable rhythm and tone, the hunting clicks seem to be consistent in speed and pitch. Upon dissection of the parts of the corpse that we did not eat, it was revealed that the smell and hearing centers of this creature's brain were exceptionally large compared to that of a human's. Examination of its sinuses and facial structure suggests an olfactory system more similar to a bloodhound than that of a man. I know what you're thinking. Why didn't they smell Mr. Gray if they have such good noses? And it's probably because their supreme sniffers in question were overwhelmed with the scent of iron and McDonald's in that fat guy's blood. Despite some of their more animalistic and brutal actions, the people of the cavern are actually quite intelligent. So much so that they've mastered tool use and discovered fire. Whether or not they did this independently or copied off the humans' homework is unknown. The pictograph that they paint around the cave and on the hills of Death Valley at night show an understanding of symbolism and a capacity for abstract thought. Their clicking language alone suggests a complex and intelligent brain. I mean, that one joined the pyramid scheme, so they're not all geniuses, but you know, there's a wide range just like humans. The most obvious identifier of the cavern people's intelligence are their religious practices, demonstrated by former investigator, professional spelunker, and current probable corpse, Richard Gray, and his notation of their ritualistic consumption of human beings who find themselves in the cave. It appears that the cave people consume the majority of the vital organs of the individual, but leave the rest of the flesh intact, save for carving the limbs in such a manner that they effectively look as though they've become doubled. The cave people probably used to just wait for people to go into the cave to get ritualistically eaten, but due to the annexation of the cave, they likely now just abduct humans under the cover of darkness. So just like a lot of the times that humans try to fix shit, they inevitably just made it worse, and the main people it's affecting are people who had nothing to do with the decision at all, and disagreed with it in the first place. And they all lived happily ever after. The end. Usually when people say the Devil's Hole, they're talking about the anus. It's impossible to completely understand the cave with the information found thus far, so if you want me to come back and examine more of the strange happenings in and around the Devil's Hole in the Death Valley National Park, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe with all notifications enabled, or I'll throw you in the cave! I want to thank Dead Rex for drawing this spooky man monster. Shout out the Inner Circle. Love y'all.